If you want to get an A on the TOK exhibition, you're in the right place. I've got an example here. It's somewhere up here. I don't know how I'm going to edit this video, but I've got an A. It scored a 9, which is a solid score, and it does a couple of things well that the IB said, this is awesome. Let's break it down.
Get an A in TOK.
Before we take a look at this exhibition, I want to tell you the two things that the IB said it does really well. First of all, it was on topic and it was addressing the prompt incredibly well. You'll see it below. And secondly, they come up with an answer very quickly. Procedural and content-based knowledge. They have this overarching theme and then they explore it non-stop. As we get started, check out the description. There's stuff here that you can download that will help you get an A in the TOK exhibition. Examples that I made for you, an organizer for you. I actually hacked the rubric a little bit, highlighted something. I'm gonna help you out with that. But I can't send you this one. I don't know if I'm supposed to do that, but we can definitely make a YouTube video out of it. So the prompt is, are some types of knowledge more useful than others? Honestly, you could just answer this by saying yes. This is a really easy prompt. So what that means is you're gonna have to figure out a theme, a perspective, whatever, that's gonna help you answer it in a deep manner. A lot of people that I talk to, they wanna include a book as one of their objects, and that is a minefield because a lot of people choose a book and then just talk about, here's what the story was. This is a great example, probably the best example that I've seen of using a book as an object, which means it has a specific context and there's something more than just, I'm learning piano. So for example, if you were gonna have a D response. So for example, if you were gonna have a D, oh shoot. I just kicked my camera. I hope I didn't mess that up. So if you were gonna have a D example introducing this book, here's what you write. You say, this is my music book that I use for learning piano. I used to not know how to play piano, but I gained knowledge from this book. I didn't have knowledge, but now I do. That's terrible. That's how you should not treat an object in the TOK exhibition. Do it like this. Let's check this out. My first object that I have chosen is one of my books. A practical guide giving the reader insight into how to play the extremely complex piano works composed by Chopin. So this next paragraph now is going to do what you have to do, and it's going to say, here's how the book uses knowledge. Check this out. Traditionally, books tend to be associated closely with content-based knowledge. So this is one of the themes that the author is going to write about here. In everyday life and popular culture, the term book learning is usually used to mean academic knowledge from books, as opposed to, I'm gonna highlight it because this is the theme here, practical or procedural knowledge. This academic knowledge is often seen as the most important and useful type of knowledge to have. Great, so this is talking about books using knowledge, books communicating. However, sometimes being book smart is also used to refer to being traditionally academically clever as opposed to being savvy or street smart. So all these different types of knowledge here. In this case, the association with books can sometimes be used in a negative way to suggest that the person does not have practical knowledge of real life or only has knowledge that lacks in practical usefulness. So what's happening here is this actually isn't grounded in the object at all. But what's gonna happen is the next paragraph is gonna take all of these ideas about knowledge and say, here's how my book does all of this. I chose this particular book to include in the exhibition. So this is what's in the rubric. This is justifying the inclusion in the exhibition. Because while the author gives me much background in content-based knowledge, that's the theme, about the key elements of the pieces, she also gives practical tips and aids me with how to develop and execute my procedural knowledge in the context of this piece. And the example is the practical fingerings. In this way, the book is both an important way of storing and spreading content knowledge, but also of sharing procedural knowledge that the author garnered through decades of experience. This is great. It completely nails not what the book's about, but it nails how the book communicates what it's about. Now this last paragraph is going to do a great job drawing a conclusion and addressing the question. It's going to end with a very clear addressing of the prompt and talk about what the student thinks about how this addresses the prompt. This book brings together the content knowledge and procedural knowledge into one source, just as I bring my academic interest and my knowledge of how to play the piano. I believe that my enjoyment of the book is much higher as a result of being able to play the piano and try out the techniques suggested in this book. So playing and techniques. And this way, my having the procedural knowledge of how to play the piano enriches my enjoyment and understanding of the academic knowledge about Chopin. So this is talking about enriching the exhibition, and this is just summarizing everything about, we've got our knowledge, we've got our object, now we're tying them all in together. Now, as I said earlier, this is a great example of how to use a book as an object for an exhibition. One of my students wanted to include the Bible as it taught her moral and spiritual lessons. And I said that using the book and saying, here's what the book is about, that's not the way to do it. Instead, I sent her this example and I said, look at what this exhibition talks about. It talks about how it communicates. So if you are someone and you want to use a religious text, what you can do is talk about what mediums of writing are in that religious text. So the Christian Bible, the Torah, what they do is they communicate through oral histories, through poems, through letters, through many different things. So you need to be thinking about, what does this book of the Bible, what does this part of the Hebrew Bible, how are they telling a story? How are they communicating wisdom? How are they communicating a religious truth? Not, here is the religious truth that they are communicating. Totally different things. Ew, this is kind of gross. Okay, this is object number 2, and it's kind of gross. What are they? I don't know. That's why I need the exhibition for. The crazy thing is this response is only 297 words. Now, it's not simple to write a short response. To write a short response like this and get a 9 means this person is super smart. They should probably start their own YouTube channel, not me. This response also has some connection with the response above it, which is not a requirement, but if you have some sort of little interactions there, it will always go well. So this first paragraph is going to do what we have to do. It's going to introduce the topic and its context. Let's do it. My second object in my exhibition is 4 fishing. Oh, they're fishing spears, which are about 250 years old and are from an exhibition in the Australian Museum in Sydney. These spears were used by the Aboriginals in Australia to fish. In the harsh and dry conditions of Australia, finding food on land will not have been easiest for the indigenous Aboriginals. So those living near water will have made them resort to fishing with these spears to garner food for them and their families. It was reported that these types of spears could reach up to 6 meters in length. Now, what's great about this next paragraph is it's going to talk about the things that were in the first response, but come to a completely different conclusion. In a TOK essay, I call these claims and counterclaims. And in TOK, it's great to disagree with yourself. Don't answer the prompt, explore the prompt. I chose this object carefully to help show that both content-based and procedural knowledge. So again, we've got a theme. Also, if you haven't seen my example of a 10 out of 10 from the IB, these guys are doing the exact same thing. They're taking the theme of the IA prompt and coming up with a theme and then hammering that theme over and over again. These kinds of knowledge are important and useful depending on the situation, and that sometimes actually procedural knowledge is far more useful. Often, content-based knowledge is seen as the most valuable and important type of knowledge. However, this does not mean that this type of knowledge is always the most useful. The spear is a great example of the usefulness of procedural knowledge because if the tribe did not have the knowledge of how to fish in this way, then they would probably have died. I like that a lot. So we're saying, yeah, but what happens? Well, death. So organizationally, this response is doing the same thing again. The first paragraph talks about the object. The second paragraph talks about knowledge, and the third paragraph is going to tie both of those things together. Let's see what it does. These spears show an example where the implication of not having this practical type of knowledge would be very severe, even fatal, and the tribe could go extinct. In this situation, no amount of content-based knowledge would be helpful to them if they didn't have the procedural knowledge of how to actually fish using the spears. They highlight that it is a mistake to dismiss procedural knowledge as not important or useful as content-based knowledge, as sometimes the implications of not having procedural knowledge can be far more immediate and dangerous for us than the implications of not having content knowledge. This is great right here. This is directly addressing the prompt, and this is giving their own interpretation. They're saying, here is my answer. What I always suggest you do is that your last sentence is a direct answer. What I also like doing is making that a separate paragraph. So make your last sentence a paragraph directly addressing as clearly as possible what the prompt is asking. Object number 3, I'm gonna say is actually the weakest. because it turns into not a discussion of the object, but actually a discussion of PhDs in general, which I don't think is very effective. I also don't think that that's what the IB wants. This is a stock image. This is just talking about here's what PhDs are. So I think that this is probably the reason that it's not a 10. Also, the IB said that some things are too repetitive in here. That's what also brought it down to a 9. So here's the first paragraph, which honestly is general and vague and doesn't really tell that much. And that's because it's a stock photo. They, unlike the other things, they don't have a personal connection. So this one's just not that great, but still we're talking about a 9 here. So we can't be that bad. Okay, the third and final object. The third object that I am using for this exhibition is a photo of a person being awarded their PhD certificate. You just say PhD. Receiving a PhD is the highest degree attainable in a given academic discipline, proving that one has an expert content knowledge, so again, content knowledge, in their specific AOK. Also, really good to talk about AOKs and WOKs, and always abbreviate them because you're writing to a TOK examiner. It is included in this exhibition. This is part of the rubric. Remember to download my help in the comments, as the classic and highly respected example of achieving at the top level within the framework of traditional content-based knowledge. Honestly, we know this is just not that great. The second and third paragraphs, these are going to be the opposite. These are going to tie in everything that was just said and be on topic the whole time. Someone who has a PhD has proven themselves to possess the personal content-based knowledge of the topic, but this does not mean that they necessarily have any practical, procedural knowledge related to that topic. In some fields, such as medicine, the person needs both content and procedural knowledge, but in some areas, a PhD degree might not involve any procedural knowledge, for example, in philosophy or history. A PhD degree can be very useful to people to help them get a job. If a person wants to get a job, this is just not talking about the object as much. An academic professor, then it is likely to be a necessary requirement to have a PhD. What does this have to do with knowledge? According to a 2016 article in The Economist, in some subjects having a PhD can also make you more likely to earn a higher salary, on average 14% more. However, in some AOKs such as mathematics and social sciences, this is not the case, and in these areas, people with a PhD earn the same salaries as people with a master's degree. Also, only 14%, that's kind of bad. The last paragraph, again, it's going to tie it all in together. The last paragraphs of this exhibition are just stellar. This object shows that whether you see having this level of in-depth knowledge of one area as being useful will often depend on what knowledge is needed for or what it will be used for. Really good conclusion there, really good idea. If I want to be a historian, then having a PhD in history would be very useful. But in many other situations, that type of highly specialized knowledge is not needed or useful. Now, what's interesting about this is there's not a conclusion. They're just dropping it here. This is the end of the exhibition. And when you think about it, that would make it for a terrible essay. There's no quotes, there's no thesis, the answers disagree, and there's no conclusions. But that's why I really like this assignment. This essay talked about two different kinds of knowledge, but then explored how different parts of those knowledge may be more valuable at certain times. You don't have to have a thesis that answers everything. Instead, you can look at the prompt in different ways, and each response can disagree or contradict or just interact with the others in a cool, interesting, analytical way. So if you haven't yet, check out the description here, see what I have put for you, what I have created for you, some really good examples. Also keep in touch. If you want to see the other stuff I'm working on, you can click on the link down below. Also, if you want to provide me with an example, I would love to make a video on your exhibition. Just don't get mad if I rip it apart. I'm just kidding. I won't rip it apart. And if you have any questions, if you want to talk about the exhibition, leave a comment down below like my screen says. You can add me on Instagram. You can check out my email, get in touch with me there. And that's really all I got. I hope that TOK sucks a little bit less today than it did yesterday. I'll see you next time. Bye. I can't, my drink's frozen. There we go.